Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 31st of October 2018, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, myself, Brian Gerrish. And there's only one subject, and that's war.
Absolutely. So here we go. Trident Juncture, NATO's biggest exercise since the Cold War. 50,000 troops, 250 aircraft, 65 ships, 10,000 vehicles in war games of potential conflict with Russia. So this is... The scenario is fascinating, Brian. The scenario is a fictional near-peer adversary on the northeastern flank of the alliance. So the only one that I can think of is Russia. It's mostly based in Norway and in the seas around Norway and also in the airspace. And Canada, the United States taking part. Now today they've got 150 aircraft, 65 ships, 10,000 vehicles deployed for a live exercise. That's going on for the next few days. And Finland and Sweden are taking part in that as well. They're not NATO members. Now, most of NATO's war games, as I say, taking place in central Norway, but some operations NATO says are scheduled to take place on the coast and in the Norwegian Sea. Well, very near where Russia has significant naval forces, but perhaps more naval forces than they had originally planned. So let's have a look at what Jens Stoltenberg was saying about this at the press conference yesterday.
This is a defensive exercise. NATO is a defensive alliance, and all nations have the right to exercise their own forces, and we are exercising on NATO territory in Norway, and we exercise with our close partners Finland and Sweden. We are transparent about what we do. This is a long time planned exercise, and we have also used the NATO-Russia Council to brief Russia on the exercise, and we have invited observers from the OSCE to observe the exercise. They can talk to the soldiers, the troops participating in the exercise. They can conduct overflights, and they will also be briefed on the scenario of the exercise. NATO always invites observers to our exercises. Russia has not invited international observers to any exercise since the end of the Cold War. We are transparent, and we inform them about our exercises and invite them to observe them. So this is a necessary exercise to make sure that NATO continues to provide credible deterrence. And the reason why we do that is to prevent conflict, of course, not to provoke a conflict. We were notified last week about the planned Russian missile test outside the coast here, out of Møre og Romsdal. Russia has significant forces, naval forces, in this area. They are regularly exercising their naval capabilities, maritime capabilities off the coast of Norway. I expect Russia to behave in a professional way, and it will not change the plans of our exercise. We will, of course, monitor closely what Russia does, but they operate in international waters, and they have notified us in the normal way.
So, Brian, a fictional near-peer adversary in the northeastern flank of the alliance. The only conclusion that Russia could come to there is that it's them that's being targeted in this exercise. So they've now decided to hold this missile test off the coast of Norway in international waters. It's hardly surprising that they may feel the need to make a point.
Well, I think this is one of the things, Mike, that maybe a lot of people don't consider when they're thinking through what NATO is doing, but the fact that these exercises are effectively held right up to the Russian borders. If we imagine that the Russians with some allies came down through the Norwegian Sea and started practicing landings adjacent to Scotland, we might have a completely different view as to whether that exercise was transparent and non-threatening or not. But in a time when we can see tension being ramped up, as we're going to show, I think, later in the news, the only thing this exercise can be doing is ramping up the tension. So it's not surprising the Russians have responded. Just a comment on Mr. Stoltenberg's dress there. Was that carefully selected? So against that backdrop, it almost appeared as though he'd got semi-combat gear on. He wasn't there in a shirt and tie, which would have rather stood out. He would have been the politician who, of course, is not going to go anywhere near the combat. He is attempting to make it look as though he's a little bit of an action man and he's part of the game. Yeah, I may be cynical on that. But
well, yeah, okay, but the Norwegian Prime Minister was there as well, and he was wearing a woolly jumper too. So I think this was some kind of
dressing down.
But
day.
this was a white and grey number, so perhaps this was it's dressing down day indeed.
Okay, well, can we trust what we're being shown on by the media and indeed the British government when it comes to matters of defence? I'm going to say a big thank you to one of our viewers that sent us through another of the fine Commons Library briefings. And we did a little bit of research work on this document, as we will now show you. Let's see what they have to say. So this is the document itself, House of Commons Library, briefing paper, 30th of October 2018, Russian Intelligence Services and Special Forces. And I'll just say that the excellent picture of the camouflage man on the front has come from the Russians themselves, so they're not shy of using a little bit of Russian photographic expertise. These are the contents. KGB, Reborn, GRU, Spetsnaz, what's new? Well, there's nothing new in this document because essentially what it's doing is regurgitating everything that the government wants us to hear and believe. So what we should say is the Russians are coming. The author is a gentleman called Ben Smith. But the real question is, who is Ben Smith? Because if we start to say, well, who is this man? What is his expertise to be making these statements about the Russians and the Russian military, the Russian security services? We can't really find anything. If you go to the Commons Library website, you will find that there's quite a lot of glossy information, but they don't seem to want to declare who their researchers are, and they certainly don't want to declare who Mr. Ben Smith is. Now, if you're not aware of the House of Commons Library, have a look on their webpage. Always check what news sources have to say, including the UK column. This is what you'll find. So they're celebrating 200 years of the House of Commons Library. Now, the important thing, and you'll recognise these words, of course, Mike, the House of Commons Library is an independent research and information service. We give politically impartial briefings to MPs. So presumably they just took it upon themselves that one of the things they should be focusing on is Russia, and they've produced this briefing totally impartial, no political spin in it at all. Well, let's have a look at the little embedded video to get a full feel of how impartial this organisation is.
I just want clear, factual information on what's happening in the world.
You can get the latest analysis of the most important topics coming from a resource that is entirely impartial, expertly researched and totally free. Why is it free? It belongs to you. It's the online research of the House of Commons Library. Now forget any library that you have ever seen. The Commons Library is actually made up of small teams of experts critically separate from the world of politics. Their job is to gather information from trusted sources and collate it into unprejudiced research and analysis. This research is then published for members of Parliament to help them do their jobs. And because of this, that information has to be top grade, and it's there for you to read as well. Our experts specialise in a massive range of topics and come from lots of different backgrounds, such as engineering, housing, medicine, climate science and transport. As well as these specialists, the library also has statisticians, economists, lawyers, scientists and doctors, and they write reports on a multitude of subject areas close to all our hearts. Because they do all this work for all MPs of all parties, library reports are always politically impartial. They have to be. which means you can use them to get an in-depth understanding of subjects you're interested in, and you can be confident that they've been rigorously fact-checked.
And if
Hold
you,
on.
oh, more to come. Beg your pardon.
No, go ahead.
Or is there?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, stunning piece of video. Many people have already commented childish in its style, which I would agree with. But what did we get out of it? That this whole service belongs to us, the people. We need these people to check the facts for us. They are unprejudiced and they're separate from the world of politics.
It's free.
And it's free.
I don't think so.
Well, apart from the fact we pay for it. But let's just delve into it a little bit more. And here's the key lady running it. She is the Librarian and Director General of Participation, Research and Information at the House of Commons, Penny Young.